there, Buttercups! Your resident Teabelle here. Welcome to Hark, tis the Teabelle. Let's dive in for that tea today, huh? Well, Buttercups, we are 8 days away from Christmas. And today we're going to pull out the fun facts of Christmas, which I think you're going to find very interesting as I did today. So, let's get on to it. Okay, so of course we're going to hit the Christmas trees first. And we are going with the tallest Christmas trees, the world's tallest Christmas trees. First, we're going with the natural cut. And that was a 221-foot Douglas fir that was displayed at the Northgate Shopping Center in Seattle, Washington in 1950. This beast weighed 50,000 pounds about and is still recognized by Guinness World Records. Now, of course, we do not discount the artificial tree. And that tree, the world's tallest artificial Christmas tree, is 72.1 meters or 236 feet tall. And this one is located in Colombo, Sri Lanka. And while those two do seem to have the distinction of being the world's tallest trees, there are trees that can still reach, say, 162 feet tall. There is a grand fir in Idaho that is one of the tallest living Christmas trees in the U.S. They have a second, which is located in Los Angeles, and it's a 115-foot white fir. And it is one of the world's largest live-cut Christmas trees. We know gift buying is difficult, but if we listen to any songs in the Christmas season, the 12 Days of Christmas, well, they were trying to give us ideas, I suppose. And if you don't recall the gifts that were given in this song, I'll remind you. 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords a-leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a-milking, 7 swans a-swimming, 6 geese a-laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. But what would that cost us in 2024? I can tell you. So, we're going to start with your partridge in a pear tree. I know I'm going against tradition, forgive me. But that one partridge in a pear tree is going to cost you $370.18. Well, we add our 2 turtle doves, and that's a cool $750. Our 3 French hens will be $346.50. Interesting. Now we have the 4 calling birds at $599.96. And then, of course, you throw on the 5 golden rings for a cool $1,245. Now we can't forget those 6 geese a-laying for $900, 7 swans a-swimming, $13,124.93, 8 maids a-milking, $58, 9 ladies dancing, $8,557.37, 10 lords a-leaping, $15,579.65. You have your 11 pipers piping, and at an easier $3,714.96, and 12 drummers drumming at $4,016.85. Now, according to my source, that should be a cool $49,263.47. But if you're considering the true cost to be purchasing all 364 gifts with their repeated verses, it's going to cost you over $200,000. $209,272 to be exact. So there you go. Now it is said that the overall cost of one set of the gifts, 12 gifts, increased by 5.4% from 2023 to 2024. So, if you had any questions of how much it would cost you in 2024 to purchase all of those gifts from the 12 days of Christmas, well, now you know. Fun fact, about 2 billion candy canes are produced annually, and they are an absolute essential of Christmas every year. Now, we think to ourselves, well, that makes sense because they no longer just come in the original white and red peppermint flavor that we know. They have so many different variations right now that you can get pretty much any flavor that you want, I'm sure. But what is the origin story on the candy cane? Now, there are myths, and there is one that is debunked, that an Indiana confectioner added a hook to the peppermint sticks, creating a J for Jesus. But why was it debunked? Because the candy cane had actually been around since 1607. So, when we go back to 1607, we're in Germany, and we have a choir master trying to keep his young singers quiet during a religious ceremony. So he gives them one. Well, he then bent the sugar sticks to resemble a shepherd's hook to go along with the proceedings, the religious proceedings. Well, we know that around the 17th century, pulled sugar was actually really popular in Europe. So this did add a lot of credibility to this, what we would call myth, but it did add a lot of it. Now, in 1847, you see the first true documented candy cane in the U.S. appear, when German-Swedish immigrant August Ingard used the candy to decorate his Christmas tree. But it didn't look like the ones we know as the white and red peppermint treats. It was just white. Now, the 20th century is dawning. Companies begin to produce these with the iconic red stripes. And the following decades, this exploded because the popularity soared, okay? Especially at Christmas time. Now, they really did make these by hand, but someone decided they didn't want to do that and got smart. That person was George Keller, and he invented the automatic process in the 1950s. Georgia-based candy company Bob's Candies were the first to mass-produce the peppermint treat. It's a J. Now, is it because it's a shepherd's hook or a J for Jesus? We don't know, but if we're following that rabbit hole, the white could represent the purity of Christ, while the red stripes represent his blood. Did you know that Jingle Bells was not actually written as a Christmas song? We know it now as the essential Christmas song, or one of them. But when James Lord Pierpont, born in 1822, wrote this song, it was not meant for Christmas. So I'm going to go ahead and call him our composer, because there are other Pierponts that make it confusing, okay? So our composer was born in 1822, like I just said. His older sister, Juliet, married millionaire Junius Spencer Morgan, and their oldest child, John Pierpont Morgan, followed his father into the banking business and became one of the most powerful financiers of the Gilded Age. J.P. Morgan, that's who we're talking about. So J.P. Morgan's uncle wrote Jingle Bells. Now, our composer wasn't exactly the most family of men, okay? And like I said, this is sort of a dark history, so just go with it. His father was a fiercely abolitionist Unitarian minister. His name was Reverend John Pierpont. Now, our composer from an early age wanted to be away from his family. He wanted freedom, adventure, things like that. So at 14, he ran off from boarding school, joined the crew of a whaling ship, and spent nearly a decade at sea. Now, when the California Gold Rush struck in 1849, would anybody be surprised to learn that our composer left his wife and children behind in Massachusetts while he chased riches in the West? Well, as did probably a lot of people, He returned home several years later, no wealthier than when he had left. But that did not deter him from leaving his family again in 1853 to become the organist at a Unitarian church in Savannah, Georgia. This church was pastored by his brother. Now, his wife died in 1856, and several months after that, he married a daughter of a Savannah mayor and left the two children from his first marriage back in the North with their grandfather. Definitely not winning awards for Father of the Year, or Husband of the Year, I guess. Now, we said he was a rebel. He wanted the freedom, he wanted the adventure. So, in fact, in the terms that his father and his brother were both very anti-slavery, and our composer was very much a supporter of the Confederacy. So his brother he was forced to close his church down and return to the North in 1859 because his abolitionist preaching was kind of just getting in the way for the Confederacy. This is just a background. There's no personal opinion in this. This is just facts, okay, guys? Well, our composer remained in Savannah, and when war broke out, he enlisted with the 1st Georgia Cavalry and served as a company clerk. Now, his father, on the other hand, served on the Union side as a chaplain of the 22nd Massachusetts Infantry. So, our composer, during the Civil War, wrote Confederate anthems, including Strike for the South, We Conquer or Die, and Our Battle Flag. Now, our composer remained in Georgia after the war and lived out his final years in Florida before his death in 1893. The original name, back to Jingle Bells, was not actually Jingle Bells. As with most things, it probably went through a transition, and it was originally named One Horse Open Sleigh in 1857 when it was published by a Boston music publishing house. Now, that does make for an interesting name, true. So, I understand though Jingle Bells just kind of probably is catchier. Now, we've talked about Savannah and we've talked about Massachusetts. Where would that song be considered having its birthplace, right? Well, the Boston suburb of Medford, Massachusetts, and Savannah both are claiming to be the song's birthplace. However, knowing this rebel's choice and of lifestyle, which one do you think? And I'm going to talk about them both. So, Medford, Massachusetts claims that our composer wrote his famous tune while nursing a drink in the Simpson Tavern in 1850, a year after his father took over a nearby Unitarian church. The date, if not the place, of the song's composition is unlikely, given that our composer probably wouldn't have waited 7 years to publish it. And research by Boston University faculty member Kina Hamill has found that he was still in California chasing gold at the time. So that's why that would be kind of debunked. Now, in 1985, Savannah erected a historical marker of its own across from the Unitarian church where our composer was music director at the time the song was published, and possibly soon after it was written in the city. Hamill surmises that Pierpont wrote the song in the early summer of 1857 while temporarily living in a Boston rooming house. One thing that is not in dispute is that our composer drew upon of sleigh rides and sleigh races in Massachusetts, not Georgia, when writing the song. So basically, even if our composer had been dreaming of Massachusetts, the song's birthplace probably was still Savannah. But that's just me. Now, remember how I told you it wasn't intended to be a Christmas song? There was no mention of Christmas or any other holiday in the song. And let's be honest, he's a rebel without a cause. He's an adventurer. He's a nomad. He's gonna go where the wind blows him, right? So when he had played the song for the Thanksgiving service at the church of either his brother or father's church, it shouldn't be any surprise that it might have been a little bit too risque for the audience at the time. It definitely was not going to hold up to any holy nights when the less known verses of the song describe picking up girls, drag racing on snow, and a high-speed crash. Also, the lyrics, "Go it while you're young," in the final verse of the secular standard is definitely not holy. Well, something more fun. This is 9 days before Christmas in 1965. There were 2 astronauts aboard Gemini 6, and they had just completed a rendezvous with Gemini 7, when the crew suddenly gave a troubling report to Mission Control. Yes, you heard that, Mission Control. "We have an object. Looks like a satellite going from north to south, up in a polar orbit. He's in a very low trajectory, traveling from north to south, and has a very high climbing ratio. It looks like it might even be a very low. Looks like he might be going to re-enter unidentified flying object. Re-enter soon. Stand by 1. You might just let me try to pick that thing." The unidentified flying object was suddenly broken by the sound of dun dun dun, dun jingle bells, with Wally Schirra playing a tiny harmonica, accompanied by Tom Stafford shaking a handful of small sleigh bells they had brought along for the space voyage. You've heard me right, everybody. Jingle Bells was the first song ever to broadcast from space. So, not only was it not meant to be a Christmas song in the original intent of it all, but it was also the first song to be broadcast from space, and it was written by J.P. Morgan's uncle. The more you know. Christmas shopping. Early, late, in the middle. What do you do? Well, there have been studies that have shown that men are more likely than women to start their Christmas shopping in December. And a large percentage of men will wait until the final days, with some starting their shopping on Christmas Eve. Now, why do they wait? Some common reasons include procrastination, the desire to shop closer to the holiday, or waiting for a Christmas bonus or paycheck. Now, what are some shopping patterns? Some men use the last-minute rush as a tradition, while others might consider it less stressful than early shopping. Although I have to say that it would stress me more to have to go last minute with everybody doing that same thing than it would be just to shop early, have them wrapped and tagged, and be just as surprised as you are on Christmas morning when you open your present. Christmas trees. We buy, we set up, put water, decorate it with pretty baubles and lights, place gifts under it, open those gifts, observe it with glee, and then we open the gifts, take it down in a time we deem appropriate, and it is thrown out or burned, depending on who you are, right? Well, what does the Christmas tree do to become even appropriate to be in our house? All right, let's start with seed to sale, okay? The seed starts the cycle, all right? It is a seed from a pine cone. The seed is planted in a nursery and grown into a seedling for 3 to 5 years before being sold to a farm. Farmers purchase and plant the 3 to 5-year-old seedlings in fields with nutrient-rich, level soil. Over the next 6 to 10 years, the tree is cared for. It's consistently watered, weeded, and fertilized. Now, farmers may also shear the trees to give them the shape that they think will sell most, right? Now, harvesting this. Once the tree reaches a suitable height, it is cut down and prepared for sale. That means, if you're looking at the timeline here, the number of years, it takes 3 to 5 years in a seedling field, right, to where then it takes 6 to 10 years in another field just growing. So that is 15 years. Your tree is potentially 15 years old when you get it, right? Now, Some factors that we do like to hear is that for every tree harvested, farmers typically plant 1 to 3 new seedlings to continue the cycle. Trees do absorb the carbon dioxide as they grow. And the environmental impact of a tree depends on factors like how far traveled and how it is disposed of. People think probably for environmentally safer places, you should compost it. For people who like to see burning fires, burn it. Up to you. Anyways, my friends, that is the life of a Christmas tree. So when you get that Christmas tree, know that it could be upwards of 15 years old. Okay? You're buying a teenager. No Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donder and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. Now, all of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, "Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?" Then how the reindeer loved him, as they shouted out with glee, "Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history." Essential song of the season, obviously, right? It's going to be a long-lasting tradition probably for forever. But what is the origin story of this beloved song? All right. So, some disclaimers that we should probably go ahead and go on. The resource that I used had the help of persons related to the late Johnny Marks, who was the composer of this song, and the late Robert May, the brother-in-law of Marks. So May wrote the poem which the song is based on, and they had also consulted many other sources, including census records and old newspaper articles. Both Marks and May put out some contradictory or incomplete stories about this and about their respective personal biographies. So there's no confirming or denying of the whole story, okay, guys? So that is the disclaimer. So Johnny Marks, one of our two, went to the Ethical Culture Society School in Manhattan for his primary education. Ethical culture, a philosophical, non-religious religious movement which still exists, emphasizes humanistic moral values and has often been called the quasi-religion of secular Jews. Family members who confirmed that Johnny Marks' parents were secular Jews and Johnny Marks himself was secular his whole life. He had 2 brothers, went to Colgate University in upstate New York, and graduated with a BA in English in 1935. He was Phi Beta Kappa. He later studied music at Columbia and in Paris, but earned no further degrees. He said in a 1969 interview that he had been writing songs since he was 13 and knew then that songwriting was what he wanted to do with his life. In the mid-1930s, Marks turned to songwriting and almost full-time. He paid the rent by producing radio shows and coaching singers. According to a 1969 New York Times profile of Mr. Marks, he volunteered for service in the United States Army near the start of America's entry to the War of 1942, and he served for 4 years. The Times noted that he was an infantry captain and was awarded the Bronze Star for leading in the capture of 100 German troops. The source for this information was obviously Johnny Marks, who was interviewed in connection with this profile. However, according to Marks' 1947 wedding announcement, he was the commanding officer, captain of the 12th, 20th, 26th Special Services Company in Europe. Special Services companies were usually made up of entertainers, famous athletes, and the like, and they rarely saw combat, although they received basic combat training. Clearly, there is a story here. Whether Marks was transferred to the infantry or his Special Services unit saw combat, which was very possible, especially during, those chaotic conditions, with the Battle of the Bulge in 1944 to 1945 when the Germans overran Allied frontline positions. Now, the bronze medal heroic story isn't made up. But you can't prove it, you can't confirm or deny it either way. Okay? Obviously, the United States Department of Defense doesn't give out information on the winners, and again, they will not confirm or deny any of that. But we're moving to 1947 when Marx married Margaret H. May. You might recognize that last name, okay? Who had a very similar background. She grew up in a once affluent household in New Rochelle, New York, and this is a suburb where Dick Van Dyke and his family supposedly lived in the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is close to Mark's hometown of Mount Vernon. Margaret May's parents were American-born secular Jews. Her father, Milton, was a lumber merchant who was born in Georgia. Her maternal grandfather was born in Germany. However, their family, the May household, was hit very hard in the Great Depression, and they lost all of their wealth virtually. And there were two sons, Richard and Robert, and two daughters, Evelyn and Margaret. Robert May, who was born in 1905, was old enough to have completed college, Dartmouth, in 1926 before the Depression hit in 1929. However, when Margaret was old enough to go to college, they had no wealth. So she couldn't go to college, so she became a Macy's sales clerk. There's no origin story on how Johnny Marks met Margaret May. In any event, they were married in 1947, and people can agree, all their sources, that Johnny Marks was a kind, urbane man with a dry sense of humor. He loved to play checkers at the Manhattan Chess Club, and unfortunately, he did have something of an issue with alcohol. But did he simply indulge more than most people thought prudent, or was it really a problem, right? But now we know he was married to Martha May, Margaret May. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm thinking of the Grinch right now. So Margaret. So Johnny and Margaret are married, and she has a brother named Robert May. Right? All right. This is where Rudolph is going to start presenting himself. All right. Let's go. Well, now Robert May, sometime in the 30s, moved from New York to Chicago, and that's where he had to take a fairly low-level and low-paying position as an in-house advertising copywriter for the Montgomery Ward Company. That was then only second to Sears as the country's largest retailer. Now, his first wife, Evelyn, and he had a daughter named Barbara. And Barbara was born in 1934 and 1935. Now, sadly, Evelyn contracted cancer in 1937. This is where Robert May's life really became terrible. He had a meager salary spent on cancer treatments, and his wife was dying in their small Chicago apartment. And in early 1939, his employer, the Montgomery Ward, asked him to write a cheery Christmas story that could be given away to shoppers for goodwill and help spur Christmas sales. Now, there's a lot of confusion on the amount of assistance that his daughter gave him, and that can be confirmed nor denied. Neither confirmed nor denied, right? But it all comes to a head in July 1939 when Evelyn passes away from cancer. His boss at Montgomery Ward has taken pity on him and just tells him, turn in what you have and just don't worry about it. But May has rejected this suggestion that he quit. So he moves on and he writes this entertaining children's thing, book, pamphlet, poem, however you want to, indicate it, right? So Montgomery Ward did give credit to May and the Rudolph story illustrator Denver Gillen when it was issued during the 1939 Christmas holiday season. But he got no bonus, even though it was very popular. Shoppers were demanding copies. Ward gave out 2.4 million booklets. War restrictions on paper use prevented Ward from reissuing until 1946. And then that was 3.6 million in 1946. So it was obviously popular. And then something miraculous happened. In late 1946 or 1947, the head of the Montgomery Ward business, Sewell Avery, who was a hard-nosed businessman, gave May the rights to the Rudolph poem, free and clear. It was the first time Montgomery Ward had ever done this. Now, he received an offer in 1946 to record the whole poem as a spoken word record. But he couldn't do it because at that time, the Montgomery Ward held the rights. So, persons in the company went to bat for him, and that's why the rights were turned over to him. A spoken word record of the poem came out in 1947. The record of the poem was a hit, but no major book publisher would put the booklet out in hardcover because they thought the market was dead after Ward had distributed over 6 million free copies. Then Harry Elbaum, the head of a small New York publishing house, who could be suspected as Jewish, he took a chance and he put out 100,000 copies, and they sold quickly. So now, in this whole thing, we're learning that Rudolph was inspired by the tale of the Ugly Duckling, which Meigs felt he was. He related to the Ugly Duckling tale because he was small and shy throughout childhood and knew what it was like to be the underdog. And there are sources that indicate that May was in fact bullied and that his sisters had to step in and help protect him. Now, there is very little mention of his first wife, Evelyn, or Barbara's roles, or any of that in Rudolph for a good number of years. Whether he was just in shock, in grieve mode, we don't know. But in 1941, about 2 years after his first wife died, he remarried Virginia Newton. She was another Ward employee. She was a devout Catholic. With May, she had 5 kids. The post-war success of the Rudolph book, spoken word record, and 1949 song finally brought Robert May the prosperity he needed and he wanted. In 1951, he left Ward's employ to manage his Rudolph revenues full-time. They made out because they moved out of that cramped Chicago apartment to a home in the affluent Chicago suburb of Evanston. One of his daughters later said, Rudolph kept the wolf away from the May family door. So really, Rudolph was one of those things that kept him safe. He was comfortable, but he wasn't rich. And by 1958, he had to end his 6-year hiatus from a day job and went back to work for Ward. But he retired for good in 1971. Now, the 50s and 60s, Robert May had a huge Rudolph statue on his suburban Chicago front lawn during the holiday season. And after his death, it was donated to Dartmouth. Well, when we move on, we're going to move on to Johnny Writes the Song, okay? So we have Rudolph being popular. We have the poem. We have the spoken word. We have all of it. Well, Johnny Marks had to be the one to help bring this into, say, the song. And he became aware of Robert May's poem in 1939, and he was jotting notes about it in a notebook along with like 200 possible songs he could write. And he was kind of waiting, I guess you could say. He did tell the Times that one day in 1948, he was walking in Greenwich Village. He decided that he should exchange a low note on the word nose for a high note, and everything fell into place. Rudolph would be a hit, and he spent $25,000 to create a music publishing company so that he would own, lock, stock, and barrel the rights to his song. So he did ask some big-name singers at the time to record the song, including Gene Autry. And Autry didn't quite like Rudolph, but his wife did. So she persuaded her husband to record it as a B-side to a single record. The B-side, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, was a major hit in 19 1949. Now, the Autry version of Rudolph went on to sell an astonishing 15 million copies. Now, there are some many minor differences in the Rudolph tale as conveyed in the lyrics which Marx penned and the story Robert May wrote. But they're not that far apart, and though they consider the poem superior to the song, without the popularity of the song, the poem would now be virtually forgotten. But to be fair, have you ever seen a movie where the movie was better than the book? I feel like in a movie, you have less time to be able to convey every little detail. Whereas if you're in a book or a poem, you can write all those details because it'll be read. So, I mean, I get that. Because for me, there are some things that just don't always add up. And it's not necessarily that I think the movie or the show is worse. So they just don't have the time to include every little nuance. Because if they did, some movies would be days long versus, an hour and a half, 2 hours. But I digress. Now, Marx also went on to compose two other huge hits. You might recognize them. Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree in 1958 and A Holly Jolly Christmas in 1963. Now, back to Rudolph. He also scored the animated Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer TV special, which originally aired in 1963. So, in truth, it took two men to really bring Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to light. It took the man who wrote Rudolph and his family and his circumstances, and it also took a man who knew songwriting and was also in the family. So when you listen to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, just know that this was a song that brought good vibes, also not just to us, but it brought goodness to good financial vibes and just all that kind of good stuff to the families who composed it. So, will you glide my sleigh tonight? Toys for Tots. You know that you're providing a toy for an underprivileged child, right? That's as far as I know. But what about the history of it? What about the origin story? And what about some of the things that they plan to do? Well, the basic mission of the Marine Toys for Tots program is to collect new unwrapped toys and distribute those toys to economically disadvantaged children at Christmas. Why? The primary goal of Marine Toys for Tots is, through the gift of a new toy, help bring the joy of Christmas and send a message of hope to America's economically disadvantaged children. Now, what's the history? Where's this origin story? Okay? When it was founded in 1947. Major Bill Hendricks, USMCR, founded Toys for Tots in Los Angeles, California. 5,000 toys were collected and distributed to less fortunate children during a campaign during Christmas of 1947. The first toy was a handcrafted doll made by his wife Diane. Walt Disney, in 1948, designs the first National Toys for Tots poster, which included the now famous Toys for Tots train logo. These Christmas posters have become a recognized part of the annual program, and through the years have featured such notable characters as Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Dennis the Menace, Bugs Bunny, and the Roadrunner. Now, in 1948, in addition to getting its first logo and the one that we recognize, the United States Marine Corps adopts Toys for Tots and expands it into a nationwide community action program and formally became the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve's Toys for Tots program. Marines at each reserve center throughout the nation conduct toy collection and distribution campaigns in the community surrounding the center. So in less than a year, you literally went from Los Angeles, California to nationwide. Now, 1949. This is when several celebrities begin to endorse this program. Okay? And over the years, Toys for Tots spokespersons have included John Wayne, Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, George Strait, Brooke Shields, Charlton Heston, Anne Margaret, Sammy Davis Jr., Doris Day, Andy Griffith, Charlie Daniels, Clint Eastwood, Lori Morgan, Johnny Carson, Tim Allen, Kenny Rogers, Joe Foss, John Glenn, Heather French, Henry, which was Miss America 2000, and Billy Ray Cyrus. First Ladies Nancy Reagan and Barbara Bush served as National Toys for Tots spokespersons. So within 2 years, not only did it go from Los Angeles, California, it went to celebrities, right? Now, in 1956, Oscar-winning songwriters Sammy Fain and Paul Webster composed the Toys for Tots theme, which was later recorded by Nat Lee and Vic Damone. So this was such a noble cause that people were coming to it organically and keeping its impact just growing for the nation. Now, the Marine Toys for Tots program went international on 3 occasions in 1959. The first followed the catastrophic typhoon that devastated the city of Nagoya, Japan in 1959. The other 2 occasions were to the Republic of Panama following the invasion in 1988 and the Caribbean following Hurricane Hugo in 1989. So, that was the first time that this program supported kids internationally. They would do it again in 1988 and 1989, respectively. Now, we've gone from a thought to a city to nationwide to celebrities to international. What else can we do? Well, in 1960, KABC TV of Los Angeles received the highest non-military award possible from the Commandant of the Marine Corps for sponsoring a spectacular Toys for Tots circus. So now we're going into new waters, and this is awesome. Now, we have celebrities, we have all these great things. Who's next to support it? Well, in 1962, that was the New York Yankees. They sponsored the first major sports benefit to increase the Toys for Tots, a Bring a Toy game with the Washington Senators. Since then, the world of professional sports, both teams and individual athletes from virtually every sport, have supported Toys for Tots. So in 1962, the New York Yankees started it in sports. Now, we've seen it grow from its inception in 1947, right? Well, 1970 is now growing as the public support grows, right? More businesses are becoming involved. Local civilian organizations and individuals are assisting the reserve units with local programs. So in the 23 years that it is huge. In that same year, 1970, we went from 5,000 toys in Los Angeles, California in 1947 to a level of an average of 6 million toys collected and distributed annually by 1970, which is amazing. Also, they were collecting used toys as well, okay? They had been collecting from 1947 through 1979. They were collecting used toys. Well, people on reserve were refurbishing the used toys on drill weekends during October, November, and December. So they were making use of everything they got. Now, we've gone international, we've gone nationwide, international, all of it. Well, the original Toys for Tots unit, Mobilization Training Unit, CA-16, Los Angeles Public Affairs, well, they took on the responsibility of collecting, transporting, and distributing toys to the Navajo Nation and later to other Native American tribes in 1980. So they were trying to help everybody at this point. And in 1980, the Toys for Tots Native American program was established as the Navajo Toys for Tots program. They now have a special relationship since the Code Talkers of World War II fame. So now they have their own, and they've expanded since then. It's amazing. Now, in 1980, they did make a decision to collect only new toys, which is understandable, right? Because in that time, you know, it's just easier. In 1983, First Lady Nancy Reagan served as Toys for Tots spokesperson. So they have now the First Lady, a president's wife. So 1989, best year ever, because that's when I was born. But anyways, there was a requirement for charities to support the program. So U.S. Marine Corps identified the need for the creation of a charity to be the fundraising and support organization for this program. So they created it. Now, they did a lot of promoting it. But in 1990, the first national television network promotion for this program occurred. King World Merv Griffin Productions evening television game show Wheel of Fortune and Pizza Hut conducted a 3-week promotion of Toys for Tots that raised nearly $3 million. It set records that are recorded in the Guinness World Book of Records. Sorry guys, for participation and donations made to a call-in promotion. Marine Corps Reserve units collected and distributed over 7.9 million toys. They are mobilized for Desert Shield Storm, but Toys for Tots goes on. So we're in the 90s. They've done so much, so many amazing things, right? Well, in 91, the Secretary of Defense authorized the Marine Corps to recognize and work with the Marine Toys for Tots in Foundation in general. In September, the Marine Toys for Tots Foundation became an operational organization and supported Toys for Tots for the first time during the Christmas 1991 campaign. The foundation headquarters was located in Buffalo, New York. So, remember, 1947, 5,000 gifts, Los Angeles, California. 1991 brings us how many years of changes? All these immaculate changes. It's amazing. 1992 comes and the Memorandum of Agreement between the Marine Forces Reserve and Marine Toys for Tots is signed. In that same year, you know who that spokesperson was? First Lady Barbara Bush. This is not a political thing. This is just facts, people. Now, same year, 1992, they have collected and distributed over 7.4 million toys. And Toys for Tots Foundation provided over 250,000 toys for children of Florida and Louisiana who were victims of Hurricane Andrew. Y'all, I was almost 2 or 3 when it happened. And luckily I slept through it. But my family talks about that hurricane and it was quite a doozy. So that was an issue and I'm glad that they did that. I wonder if I have a toy from them. That would have been kind of cool. Okay, so I'm back onto Toys for Tots now. So, in 1993, Lieutenant General Matthew T. Cooper, retired, becomes the president and CEO of the Marine Toys for Tots Foundation September 1st. So, we are now moving on up. We are now up to 8 million toys in 1993 that are collected and distributed. Now, this year, we're focusing on the victims of the Mississippi Basin floods. So they also make sure that there are places and people who have issues, especially like that, are helped. So they did move their headquarters in 1994 to Quantico, Virginia. and they distributed 6.8 million toys to 3.4 million children in need in 1994. It's down a little bit, but not every year is going to be record breaking. Now, has this been an official activity of the U.S. Marine Corps? Not until 1995, which is fine. They made it an official mission of the U.S. Marine Corps, and that's amazing. In 1995, they also went up to 8.1 million toys to over 4.2 million children in need. And 1990, it is in all 50 states, supported in all 50 states. 1996 also brings Garth Brooks as a supporter of the program. He supported them by giving concerts dedicated to this program and by providing public service announcements to aid local program efforts. Okay, so 50 years in, 1997, they have done so much good that they would have never been able to do if somebody hadn't had this idea. And you know who that national spokesperson was in 1997? Kenny Rogers. They also had Warner Brothers host a 50th anniversary event on December 3rd. It was at their Hollywood studio, during which the late Bill Hendricks was posthumously presented at the Department of the Navy Meritorious Public Service Award. Which is amazing because, why so late? But you did it, so cool. Now, we know that they have different events. We have different spokespeople. And they had a national kickoff luncheon in 2000. It was November 17th. And campaign started fast and never looked back. Okay? That year, it was John Glenn, veteran Marine, astronaut, and U.S. Senator, and Heather French Henry, which was Miss America 2000. And they both gave inspiring remarks to 500 attendees. Well, 2001, we all know what happened then, and they supported all of the 9/11 victims, okay? It was also another anniversary. The Marine Toys for Tots Foundation celebrated its 10th anniversary. They did a lot of good stuff, a lot of anniversaries. In 2003, Billy Ray Cyrus was their national spokesperson. All right. He joined General Michael W. Hagee, commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, as one of the featured guests at the annual National Kickoff Luncheon in Alexandria, Virginia on November 21st. So this is that luncheon we talked about, y'all. In 2005, they become an accredited charity. The Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance reported that Marine Toys for Tots had met all of the 20 standards, so it's now an accredited charity. In 2007, they had their 60th anniversary, and still needed help, but they were able to successfully do a deployment to Southwest Asia by units of Marine Forces Reserve. So the people came together and helped. We got a new CEO in 2008. They established a literacy program in 2008 as well. So, after supporting Toys for Tots since 2005 and raising $1.3 million to help brighten the lives, the UPS Store and Mailboxes Etc. network launched the Toys for Tots literacy program. And that is a year-round initiative in March of 2008 to expand upon its existing partnership. So the Toys for Tots literacy programs maintains the Toys for Tots mission of delivering hope. It extends the organization's reach and impact by providing children in need with the gift of a book. The program not only brings the joy of reading to these children, but it serves as an important tool in breaking the cycle of poverty. So basically, they're allowing them and helping them to be more well-read. They moved locations again for the headquarters, and now it's just outside the Marine Corps base in Quantico. In 2009, another First Lady, Michelle Obama, served as a national spokesperson. She continued her support in 2011, and in 2011, it also expanded its exposure. It it continued to focus on the exposure for Toys for Tots brand, right? But they also held a closing bell ceremony. Had Blue Angel support in the Hollywood Christmas Parade. In 2012, Michelle Obama supported it again for her fourth year, and the support just continued to come in, and it continued to rise. Federated Auto Parts, a second-year national corporate sponsor, raised $65,000 at their April national conference. So they were raising money. They had businesses raising money. And it just continues to grow and grow because people really just see the good in this program. And the fact is that as you continue to see this grow and the things that it does, you can see why it's necessary to have this program and be thankful to have this thought, because they continue to grow also in their support. You have in 2015 you have support from the golf classics, um and it's amazing to me. You have Hallmark as a corporate sponsor, Build-A-Bear, Hasbro. You have First Lady Michelle Obama coming in. You have Blue Angels assisting in disaster relief. Toys R Us as a guest of honor. Um, there's so many things that you guys. It's very, very cool. In 2017, First Lady Melania Trump served as a national spokesperson. In 2017, they also delivered 30,000 toys to children in Puerto Rico because of the hurricane. And their Native American program has grown substantially in 2018. It's astonishing to see the amount of support and how we can come together to help everybody around us. In 2021, the program provided toys, books, and other gifts to nearly 17,000 children of Afghanistan refugee families who were granted asylum in the U.S. And they expanded in 2021 also to the and they expanded in 2021 also to the foundation officially launching the Youth Ambassador Program. This program is great because it spotlights young people who go above and beyond to provide hope to disadvantaged families in their communities. So now it's not just big companies, it's not just celebrities. You're bringing the young people into it now. So you're becoming well-rounded. They support Their support now extends in 2022 to children living in foster care. The program providing resources and hope to over 447,000 children in foster care in 2022. It's amazing. Now, we come full circle in 2022 as well, because a United States Marine named Major Mariela Pena, she shared her impactful story with the foundation. She received gifts from Toys for Tots as a young girl. And that's what inspired her to become a United States Marine. She was featured on Good Morning America and published in the Marine Corps Good Time. So, as you can see, First Ladies have been supporting this program. Um, they celebrated 75 years in 2022. They moved to year-round support also in 2022. And now in 2022 they also hit an unprecedented 24.4 million toys, books, and games to almost 10 million children. So, everybody, when you see your Toys for Tots bins, do it. Because the fact of the matter is, they have done such amazing things in their lifespan that we can only imagine what amazing things they're going to do moving forward. So thank you to all of those involved. Y'all are rock stars. Buttercups, I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you found these facts just as interesting as I did, or maybe more, who knows. But any comments, questions, or concerns you can send to hearktisthetbell@gmail.com. You can locate us on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. And I hope that you have a very merry week. See y'all later.